Okay, I've been tasked with two things tonight. One is to talk about social media, and the other is to talk about the use of tablets and sort of mobile devices in business. And you can already see the use of mobile devices in business sort of right from the very start, because my presentation is on my iPad. I'm controlling it from my iPhone, and that, to me, is one of the great things about some of the technology we'll be looking at, is actually the way we can use it all together. It can speed things up and answers one of the perennial problems that people always face when it comes to social media, which is, I don't have the time. So hopefully some of the tips we'll share about mobile technology will help with some of the social media technology. So I'm going to look to begin with at using social media to grow business. I'm aiming to sort of do about half an hour talk, so it'll be about 15 minutes on this, 15-20 minutes on this, and about 10 minutes, just a brief overview of some of the ways that I use mobile devices in my business life. Just to quickly get a feel of usage in the room, who here is on LinkedIn? Okay, so LinkedIn, we've got getting on for 100% coverage. Who here is on Facebook? That's personally business Facebook usage. Okay, fair number. Twitter. Okay, fairly good coverage. Who here blogs? Lowest numbers. Okay. Instagram. We have one. I'm dropping down the numbers now.
I have daughters.
Google Plus.
Oh no.
We have one or two using Google Plus. I mean, the thing is, there are actually hundreds of social media networks out there. I've just named some of the big ones with some of the biggest numbers of users in there, but actually there are many, many social media networks. Instagram I mentioned as an interesting one. You may think that young people are all busy using Facebook, but actually where most older teens are these days, and younger teens, is on Instagram. And that's not just to share photos, that's to use it as a social media network to share conversations with friends. Part of the reason they do that is their parents thought that Instagram was just about photos, so parents will happily download and install it on their child's iDevice, thinking it's all nice and sweet and above board. Believe me, if you see some of the photos that teenagers share, it's anything but. So some of you may have seen this before. This is my social media the BA definition, and just to give you a feel of where the various social media networks sit. You've got Facebook, which is generally people you know, so it's people you've had a beer with in the past, it's people you would go choose to have a beer with in the evening, they're people you know reasonably well. LinkedIn is people you have beer with at conferences or a glass of wine, or in my case normally it's a cup of coffee to try and wake you up at a morning breakfast meeting. Twitter is people you talk to about drinking beer but you actually haven't met yet, and over half of my Twitter following, probably even getting on for 75% of my Twitter following, I haven't met face to face. I've even had business off 2 or 3 of them that I've not met face to face, so gives you some idea. MySpace, the sort of the start of all of social media, desperately trying to reinvent itself again as the place, the social network all about music and places to go to hear music, and probably failing in the process. Blogging, where you can talk at great length about drinking beer and the best places to drink it in the right ways. Blogging is all about proving expertise, showing knowledge and demonstrating in a bit more detail. Flickr, another social media network about photo sharing along the lines of Instagram and all the rest of it, so you can go on there and you can view exotic beer drinking locations, and YouTube is where you can watch what everybody got up to after drinking too much beer. But actually, it's a great business tool as well. There's lots of really useful videos on there. There was a recent survey done where 51% of CEOs said they preferred to watch video content to explain something than they would to read an article. So if video is not part of your marketing mix, you need to start thinking about it being part of your marketing mix. That number is growing all the time. As we've all got mobile devices which are now capable of streaming video, you've got your headphones on, it's easier to watch a bit of a video clip than it is to read an article, especially if you're on the train or whatever. Big question, social media, is it worth it? This is sort of where we are in the process. We're at the late majority, in fact, rapidly moving towards the laggard stage if you've not adopted social media within your business. Why are people doing it? Exposure for my business is obviously the biggest one. increase traffic, subscribers, improve search ranking. What I always find fascinating is, I'm sorry, that's my number one reason for doing most things in my business, is improving sales. It slightly concerns me that that's down at the bottom of the list for why people are doing social media, and that does answer, starts to illustrate some of the problems and the challenges that businesses are having. This was some survey done a little while back, but the situation still, and this is still what I find from anecdotal experience, that most people don't have a defined strategy for social media. Very few have had any formal training, but they're all planning to spend more money and invest more time. Now, I don't know about you, how long you've been in business. I may not look old enough, but I have been in business for 20 years. And I know that in most things in business, it's pretty important to have a plan about what you're doing if you're going to see success. And I think there's reasons I hear so often, social media doesn't work for me, online marketing doesn't work for me, search engine optimization doesn't work for me in my business, is because very few have actually set out before they started to define what it was they wanted it to achieve for them. So that, I think, is a big challenge for many people. Where people are spending their time, Twitter heads up the list, and blogging is at the bottom, which I don't agree with as a priority ranking, especially if you're in business-to-business sales. I moved LinkedIn to the top, so that's not a big move, but I moved blogging from the bottom up to second position, then followed by Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And I'll just draw a bit of a diagram on the old-fashioned method of doing it to explain a bit about why I think that's the case. So the way I think about online marketing activities is sort of a bit of a hub and spoke approach to things. So I consider blog, your company blog, as the hub for the rest of your online marketing activity. That can be where you're generating useful, informative content about your business, what you do, something that's useful to your customer base, informs, educates them, and demonstrates that you're expert in your field, and also, quite helpfully, has all the nice words and questions that people ask on search engines, so therefore you help move yourself up the search engine optimization funnel. What that then does is you've got your LinkedIn, you've got your Twitter, you've got your Facebook, whatever other social media channels, your G+. So what you can then do is share this content out onto your social media channels. So you've now got a resource to inform your social media channels. And they then become referrers back in, driving traffic to your blog. What your blog then does is it points at your website. So now your blog is a driver to your website. You've also normally got email. Content you're writing for your blog can form the basis of content in your email newsletter. Your email newsletter then drives the traffic back to your blog and also drives traffic to your website. That there is just a snapshot of what we try to work on with clients in terms of an overall online marketing plan. But it worries, so often I find blogging doesn't even feature in most people's idea of online social media marketing. But actually, a good, well-written, thought-through blogging strategy can really help with the rest of your online marketing activity and make a big difference on how easy or difficult it is to do, let alone the enormous benefit it is from a search engine optimization perspective. A blog can be one of the best ways of improving your search results and people searching for you. Often because what you've got on your website aren't the keywords that people search for. What people search for often is questions. And a blog, you can answer questions. So, hey presto, you're feeding exactly the right content into the online world that people are looking for. So what are the challenges that people face with social media? Well, internal buying, integrated approach, time management. Time management is, whether you're a small business or a big business, is always one. Internal buying. Yes, that's at a big company level, you know, the board of directors, who are all generally speaking 40-plus-year-old men, not that I've got anything against 40-plus-year-old men, but largely speaking, they're the lowest demographic on social media. which therefore means that most of them don't get it, don't understand it, don't want to know anything about it, which then means that when people who are proposing it to the board try to do so, they get told, go away because we don't get it and don't understand it, or just give it to the office junior who's just left university because they know all about social media. Unfortunately, they know nothing about their business. But actually, internal buying can even happen when it's just you. If you don't believe and have a purpose in what you're doing, then I can tell you now, your social media strategy won't work. You won't get results from it. Because if you don't believe in what you're doing, people will very quickly see through what you're using social media for. It is a social activity by the name, and people will see through people trying to be overtly salesy or other things on it. Integrated approach, that's in effect what I'm talking about there. If it's not integrated into your overall marketing strategy, if it isn't working in terms of your overall sales activity, then it's not going to work for you again. If you don't know how it fits within your sales funnel, again, ask some serious questions about what you're doing. Generating quality relevant content, going back to my blog, that's why a blog could be really useful. It helps to be a content engine for your social media activity. That's just some of the issues. Should you bother? Well, don't do it with a Me Too attitude. Don't just do it because everybody else says you should be doing it and the radio keeps talking about it and such a celebrity has just started using Twitter and has tweeted about something and it's been great. Do it with a purpose. Know who your audience are. Different social media networks have different audiences, different ways of interacting, different purposes. If I'm going business to consumer, then Facebook is more important potentially than LinkedIn. If I'm not targeting 25 to 35-year-old females, that is from a business perspective, then Pinterest would be a great social media network to investigate. If I was targeting, I was a youth clothing brand and wanted to hit a 13 to 18 age group, then I need to be considering Instagram or Tumblr within my social media strategy. So a good social media marketing consultant, not a guru or an expert, I hate both of those sort of definitions when it's applied to social media, because from my experience most of them are anything but, should be looking at all the things that you traditionally look at in marketing. Market segmentation, demographics, who your target audience are, what your messaging is to them, all of those sort of things, before you ever start looking at social media. The basics need to be in place first. Once you've know your audience and you've got a bit of a plan, you can have some goals, you can have strategies to succeed in those goals, which means you can then measure your success successfully, not just saying, well, it's not working for me, well, what are you trying to achieve? I don't know, but it's not working for me. And in my personal opinion, in business-to-business marketing, LinkedIn and blogging deliver the best return on investment. So, social media, is it all new? It's all fancy, it's all something new, we've got to completely rethink the way we do everything. Actually, no. Social media is just a moving into a virtual world, what all of you are doing here tonight. It's networking. It just happens that we now do it through electronic means, and actually from my experience in business to business again, social media works at its best when it's tied into a traditional referral and networking marketing strategy. The two work really nicely together. So getting those working together is important. So the rules that apply are basically the same rules as we've always had about networking and about growing our businesses and that thing. Knowing where your customers are, what social media networks they're on is the important bit about it. It does mean there's etiquette on various social media networks. If you're out shopping and somebody asks, would you like some help, would you like to know a bit more about that product, that's a perfectly acceptable scenario where you want to be offered help and somebody to come alongside you. So in the same way on LinkedIn, because it's a business forum, being approached and talking about business issues and asking, well, can I help, this is my expertise, would that be of use to you, is acceptable. If you started to do it in quite that same forthright manner and you're in the pub, and somebody came up to you and said, would you like to can I sell you this product? You probably, first of all, wonder which lorry it fell off the back of, and say, go away, I'm enjoying a drink with my mates, I don't want to be sold to right now. And again, social media networks like Facebook, Instagram, are far more like going to the pub scene. So it just shows how there's different etiquettes for different types of social media networks. The basics. never post anything on any social media network that you wouldn't want your parents, your children, your work colleagues, your boss to see. And if you're not sure about it, leave it till you are, or probably don't post it. And the other rule is always be positive. There's nothing more off-putting than continual negativity. You probably have all followed or been friends with people on Twitter or Facebook who seem to have a continual stream of negativity. And you quickly think, well, do I really want to be faced with that every day? I'm going to just stop following you or get rid of you. So, be positive. Yeah, every now and then we're going to have something which is perhaps not as positive, but as a general rule, be positive. The first one, I think, is going to be some fascinating conversations in a few years' time when all of us who are parents and our children grow up and they get to their teens and they start to go out the door in clothes that you might think inappropriate as parents. And that you're going to say, you can't go out wearing that. And they're going to turn around and say, well, I went onto your Facebook timeline and I looked back 20 years and I found the photos that your friends posted of you when you went out on a Friday night, and don't tell me what I can wear and what I can't wear. So I think it was interesting. I did a talk to some youngsters at a school and they were absolutely shocked to discover their employers might investigate them before taking them on and do a search for them on social media, on Google and LinkedIn and all the rest of it. And the likelihood was they would be found. So that's a brief overview of social media in general. I'm just going to, how am I doing for time? 5 more minutes on social media stuff. LinkedIn, why do I think it's the best return on investment? At a basic level, it's just useful. People keep your contact database up to date for you. 5 years ago, 3 years ago, that wasn't the case. A lot of people did their first LinkedIn profile and never got round to updating it again. Now, most people who are on LinkedIn do regularly keep it up to date and so on. So it is an up-to-date address book. It's got a strong connect with the real world. I use it a lot as a backup to my networking activity. Anybody I meet, exchange business cards with, have a chat to, I'll then normally try and follow them on social media. It's a very effective tool for traditional marketing and networking in that respect. And the changes they've made recently, especially around the contact management on it, has made it 10 times more so. The new contact manager on LinkedIn is absolutely fantastic, and I can do a 10-minute presentation on that on its own. And the time investment can be kept relatively low with LinkedIn. So of all of the social media networks, this is the one you can get away with putting the least time into. Some of the things that are important: a professional photo. Don't use the one from your holiday snap with your wife or husband cut off the one corner or whatever else might have been going on the photo. Have a professional photo shot as people normally see you at business events. An informative headline, things like this here, rather than having my website, which is the default, actually put in descriptions for your website links which are informative. And this, your summary, especially if you're a business owner, is a brochure, not a CV. It's about selling how you can help your customers, not about how your entire work history. Obviously, it's all about the connections, but one of the big things about connections is never use the default, "Hi, you're a person I trust, and I would like to add you to my network," default message on LinkedIn. Always write a bespoke request and remind the person where you met them, remind them why you want to connect. The chances of them then connecting to you are much higher, and the chances of it leading on to a developing relationship rather than it being a connection in your database which never gets used again are much higher. Facebook's. How many are you in B2C marketing at all? Are you all in B2B? B2B, business to business, yeah? Business to consumer, anybody? I know Malcolm you are a bit. Facebook is more useful on the whole in business to consumer marketing. It works in certain aspects in business to business if you're like my business. My business is involved in online marketing, involved in marketing type people, so especially some of the marketing agencies that I might work with, then Facebook's quite a good way of interacting with them. But if you're in business to consumer relationship, then Facebook can really be a powerful tool. One of my clients, they're a venue, a day out venue. We set them up with a Facebook profile about 2.5, 3 years ago. Over the first 12 months, we gathered about 4,000 followers on that Facebook page. We've got regular engagement. They post photos themselves of when they've been to the day out, all of that activity, which means every time one of their people, the people who follow that page do that, all their fans, their friends on Facebook see that activity as well. So our reach is into the tens of thousands in terms of getting that name out there. And that's a bit about what Aisha was alluding to earlier. The viral reach of social media can be enormous. And it was exhibited by the drive of people visiting that attraction was largely driven by, a lot of them driven by social media. That was the way they heard about it from their friends. Partly because it was aimed at young families, and 20 to 40-year-old females are one of the highest demographics on Facebook. So, you know, young mums absolutely love Facebook as a means of keeping in touch. So it just worked perfectly for their target demographic, which goes back to what I'm saying, it's old school marketing, find where your customers are and talk to them there. But in all of this, social media is often about the update, so what on earth do you post? And here's just some of the things that can work, you know, news updates, topical current affairs that relate to your business. We've got a client that we're working in, he's not a lawyer, but he specialises, he's a qualified company secretary, so basically when he had the opportunity to either train as a lawyer or company secretary, went down the company secretary route, and he specialised in helping companies in their legal processes. And we were able to quickly put an email together and some social media updates when Microsoft got sued by Sky for, were told to change the name of their SkyDrive on the basis that it was infringing on Sky's copyright. One of the areas he specialises in advising companies on their copyright and trademarking disputes. So we were able to use that topical issue and feed some of our past blog posts on that issue and all that sort of thing, all around that topic, and use that as a means of leveraging a current affairs issue to drive traffic to his website and so on. So that's just one example of making use of topical stuff. Posting links, obviously you've got your blog, you're blogging every couple of weeks, that's some fantastic resource of content. Photos, testimonials, all of those sort of things can feed content into your social media activity. The one that a lot of people perhaps start out on but never do anything more with is Twitter. This just gives you some idea of the growth of Twitter. Back in 2009, from 2006 to 2009, you've got this little hardly anything happening social media network. And then all of a sudden it took off. Interesting enough, I joined about here, so I'm sort of always suggesting that it was when I joined that everybody else decided to join as well. I think it was more to do with almost exactly the same time as I joined, so did a certain Stephen Fry start tweeting from a lift, if anyone remembers that particularly when he got stuck in a lift, and I think that was when the media suddenly caught hold of Twitter, and that was the explosion to a large extent. But Twitter usage is enormous. It's also beneficial from search engine optimization if you've got links back to your website. I use it as a fantastic resource for just getting information for my business. One of the big questions to face, and I'll finish on this on social media, though, is working out who you are. Now you might all know who you are, but how do you want to be very much your company, or do you much more want to be an individual posting about your company? We have 2 Twitter accounts. I employ 6 people, so there's a proper company, it's not just me. I tweet as me, Ian O'Donnell. Most of that is business news, so it does include all my personal things that I might be up to at a weekend, the running that I do in the evenings, all of that sort of thing as well. So there's a real mix in my personal social media channel. Twitter, it encompasses the whole me. The company one is very formal and far more corporate. It is news and information and stuff directly related to what Real Point as a whole is up to. So one of the things you do need to get right when you're looking at social media as well is what tone of voice you want to to use, who you are on social media. And that's just something to finish with from a social media perspective. That was a bit of a whistle-stop tour. Before anybody's eyes glaze over anymore, has anybody got any questions on social media before I get on to a bit of the sort of tablets and that sort of thing? Yes?
Just going back to your diagram there, Ian, where you've got the blog separate to the website.
Yes.
Is that a sort of clear distinction in your mind, or is a blog part of a website?
It varies depending upon the client and depending upon how they want to run it. Most of the time, I would recommend the blog being a part of your website, but a clearly defined section on your website, not just lost in the depths.
Yeah, not a menu option. It's something. Yeah.
So, but yeah, normally it'll be part of your website, and critically, it should be part on the same domain, because that all adds to the weight of the domain, which means it has an improved chance of performing on Google. So yes, that's roughly where the blog works from a technical perspective. Anybody else got any questions on social media? Or have you all sort of gone at that speed of approach? I've also been asked to touch briefly on sort of use of mobile devices and tablets and so on in business, and then just to give a bit of a snapshot of how I use it and what I make use of in my day-to-day business life. Who here has a tablet and makes use of it from a business perspective? Okay, so we've got
Whether or not you
have one, whether we make use of it or not. Most people who've got either a smartphone or a tablet, at the very basic level, will have email on there. That's sort of the absolute essentials, if you like, of mobile and tablet usage. You'll be using it for email. But the reality is there's so much more that you can do with tablets. If it wasn't for the design work element of what I do, so the technical tools I need to deliver my client work, the reality is now I could do all my business side of things on my iPad. So I don't need a desktop or a laptop computer to do most of my day-to-day business administration. That's where we've got to. Even to the extent that we've recently gone for QuickBooks, which is our accounting software, we've gone cloud-based for that. So I don't even need to have an installed accounting software package on my PC anymore. I can access it through my web browser on my iPad, and they even do an iPhone app for QuickBooks, so I can do a quick check of what invoices are outstanding, quickly check a customer's balance and send them an invoice, all from my iPhone. So when I'm out for a day with meetings, if I have to travel down to London or whatever, where I don't want to carry a big heavy bag with a laptop and all the rest of it in it, an iPad is now all I need to take with me. The great thing is the battery will last the day, and it's dead light, and I can just carry it in a little shoulder bag. I don't have to carry a big heavy briefcase surrounds me. What tools do I use for it? We've already seen one of the best things I reckon to iPads, and by the way, all the time I'm saying here applies equally to your Samsung Galaxy Tabs and various other devices. I mean, you can get a quite decent 7-inch tablet now for around the £120 mark. WH Smiths were doing one at £99 the other day. It's an e-reader, but it was a tablet basically. But yeah, I love doing presentations with it. The great thing is I can put that on a lectern in front of me, and I haven't got to have a big laptop. I can just put it there in front of me. It's not distracting like a laptop is, not screen flipped up in front of me. It's really quick and easy to just flick through stuff, and it's for me connecting it up to my iPhone. One of the other favourite tools of mine is an app called Evernote. Has anybody used Evernote? It's a cloud-based note-taking application. So I use this in meetings, go into a meeting, start writing a new note. It automatically looks at my diary and sees where I might be, so it's pulled in a title now which is relevant to what I'm doing at the moment. I type my notes in that meeting into there. When I get back to the office, this is already synchronised with Evernote on my PC and on my laptop, so the notes are all synchronised. So I haven't got to email myself my content from my iPad to my desktop or anything like that. Just boom, done.
Is your PC a Mac or a
No,
Windows?
it's a Windows PC.
And it syncs.
Evernote works on PCs, Windows PCs, Macs, I've got a Mac laptop, iPad, iPhone, Galaxies, and Linux if you're as geeky as I am. So yeah, works on almost anything. You can scan content into it, photograph content into it, and it will OCR, it'll read the text that might be on that, so it becomes searchable.
Is it similar to OneNote?
It's a very similar idea to OneNote, but in my personal opinion, slightly more flexible and I'm not tied into Microsoft. Not that I've got too much against Microsoft. Another big one that I'm a big fan of is Google Drive, Google Docs. You've probably all used Google Docs on a PC, or possibly it's a cloud-based storage. But not just storage, you can actually work on a Word document or a Excel, in inverted commas, a spreadsheet through it. There is a Google Drive application for most of the major tablet devices. So again, you can work on, view, edit your Google documents on a tablet device. You can even say, I want this to be available offline. So if you don't happen to have an internet connection, you know you're not going to have an internet connection, you can still read it when you're offline as well. So, you know, I can go into, let's find something, so real-time marketing planning, let's go back one. Management planner. It's on the internet here, that's that spreadsheet, and I can start working on that spreadsheet live. And of course, if I close the lid on this, go back to the office, bang, it's already there. That information I've typed here would already be back up at the office. So, absolutely fantastic tool. Social media. The best way of updating social media is on a mobile device. That is the way that you can integrate it into your day-to-day life without having to spend time on your PC doing it, is to use those dead moments, waiting for the train, waiting for, in my case, you know, waiting for my children to finally get themselves ready and out the door, just, you know, 5 minutes while waiting for somebody to arrive for a meeting. All of those sort of things are ways that I can then quickly check social media, have a read of stuff, post an update about my thoughts that day, all of that sort of thing. A particular app that I would highly recommend is an app called Flipboard. A really good way of seeing social media streams of information. So you can just go through your Twitter feed, reading it like a book. And it pulls in the content that people might have linked to, and it allows me to read Twitter like a magazine. And I find that, especially if I've got a technology feed on one of my Twitter streams, it's a great way of spending, you know, it's critical within the world that I work in. I have to keep up to date with stuff. It's a very fast-moving world. That's the best way I found keeping up to date with news. So you can set up various streams of information and quickly read through it like a magazine. And then you just say, oh, that looks interesting, click on it, and it will load up the full website with the story on it in full. So Flipboard, highly recommend as an app to download and install. But all of the social media networks obviously have their apps which are available on your devices, and do highly recommend downloading and installing those. The amazing thing is, though, when I talk about some of the technical stuff, I've even got, you know, my database administrative software. I've got search engine optimization, ranking checkers. I've got a web development app, so I can actually edit websites out and about on the move. So, you know, there is, especially on the iPad and Android devices, there is almost an app for almost anything you could want to do. Some of them, yes, it would be a lot more straightforward with a mouse and on a bigger screen. But if you're out and about and just quickly want to do an amend and a change, there almost invariably will be an app for that. Task management. I don't know if any of you have come across an app called Wunderlist. is one example of a task management app, and again I find iPads and iPhones, again it synchronises, so it's on my iPad, my iPhone, my laptop, my desktop, all of those have got that information. So if I tick a task off done on one, it automatically updates all the rest. And it's a great way of keeping your children entertained when there's now a few various activities show us that. My 2.5-year-old is as adept with my iPad as I am now, it would appear. He can find his way around YouTube, which is quite worrying. The various fun bits that I put on there for him. One final one that I would mention is an app called, I don't know if you've ever heard the website Log Me In. Log Me In allows you to remote control a computer. One of the other businesses I own is a PC IT support company. So we use Log Me In a lot from our desktops to control our clients' desktops to sort out problems. But you can actually get a Log Me In app for the iPad, so I can control my office PC from my iPad. So if I do need to, get something off my PC, drop it into my Google Drive on my PC, so I can then put it out on my iPad. If I want to just edit a bit of text on an InDesign document and then email the PDF to a client, I can just about do that from my iPad. Also, critically for me, if a client phones up on a Saturday afternoon and I happen to be at my parents' house and all I've got with me is my iPad, and they say we've got server problems, I can remote desktop to their server and deal with the problem from my iPad. So another app that I would highly recommend downloading, and alongside Google Drive as well, you can get the Dropbox app. So again, all of the documents that I put in my Dropbox, I can access on my iPad, and again, you can make some of them available offline for that. You've also got, on iPad in particular, the applications that I use on my Mac, so the Numbers, which is the Mac equivalent of Excel, Pages, which is their equivalent of Word and DTP, and Keynote, which is their presentation package, are all available as apps on the iPad as well. So I can save a document on my Mac in Pages and open it up on my iPad. But actually, presentations, I put them together on my iPad. The iPad interface and the ability to put presentations together is so quick and intuitive that I can often put a presentation together as quickly on my iPad as I can on my desktop or my laptop. That's the speed with which you work on it.
Just to mention about Keynote there, it doesn't work very well with PowerPoint.
Importing a PowerPoint.
Switching between the two, basically.
No, importing PowerPoints into Keynote isn't too bad. Exporting a Keynote into PowerPoint, forget it.
Yeah.
It will pretty much mock up everything you've laid out on there.
Yeah, tried that.
It's
a shame because the Keynote presentations are very
that's
good.
part of the problem, in that they make it very stylish, and it's slick, and PowerPoint isn't stylish and isn't slick, and there aren't the tools to do so, really. I mean, I actually, as a designer, I obviously have to do a lot of PowerPoint presentations for clients and so on. To be honest, but the way I do most of them is I do the slides individually in Photoshop, export a bunch of JPEGs and drop them into a PowerPoint presentation, because then I can make them look halfway decent. Using PowerPoint's own tools is generally a lost cause. And don't get me started on the transitions that they give you in PowerPoint. So that's just a whistle-stop tour. I'm just trying to give a bit of flavour of how I use it. One of the other big additions I haven't got around to buying for myself yet, but it is on my I must do in the next month, is the cases which actually have a keyboard. So it then means you've got the whole screen real estate for seeing your document, and you've got a little keyboard that links up via Bluetooth. And they're now really thin. The batteries on them will last as long as your iPad battery will. So it just forms part of the case. Flip it open, drop your iPad into it, and you've basically got a mini laptop to use. And importantly as well, it's got an up and down arrow key. Especially if you work on a document. If anybody's tried to work on a document sometimes on an iPad, that can be a little tricky. That can be really helpful. But it has to be said, the most critical two things that I still like on my iPad, calendar and email. You know, the ability to trying to read emails on an iPhone or a small mobile, yes, it's doable, yes, it's okay for a quick check, but it's not particularly pleasant and it's not particularly easy. On an iPad, you know, it's just as good as doing it on my PC. And especially train journeys, pop open the iPad, drop it on, you don't even have to have a proper table, it just about fits on the little fold down shelves that they give you on the trains, on the lucky occasion when you actually get a seat. And you can get working straight away. So yeah, highly recommend it.
Do you prefer 10 or 7 inch?
I prefer the bigger 10-inch screens. I've already got an iPhone, so I've got a small device. I don't really, for me, there was no benefit in having a halfway house. I wanted something that, you know, at the end of the day, that is big enough that it's a useful screen size to work with. A 7-inch wouldn't give me sufficient benefit for what I'm doing with it. Having said that, 7-inch can be really good as a primary device if you're not wanting to have a smartphone. So one of the benefits of a 7-inch tablet can then be actually what you get is, from a phone perspective, is an old-fashioned Nokia, you know, mobile phone where the battery actually lasts for more than 8 hours. It more lasts 8 weeks. So, you know, it's about thinking about what your needs are. And I know for some people, the problem with smartphones is actually the batteries just do not last long enough. And the final tip on that, what you can get, and is on order at the moment for me, is batteries for your mobile devices. Not the little ones, they're a waste of time, they don't really, they're only out of the extra 50% charge, but you can get decent milliamp hour ones that will actually give 3 full charges to an iPhone. And they're about this big. You can just drop those in your bag as well. It means if you're out all day, you can just charge your mobile device up, you know, as and when you need to.
Could you do that for a camera battery as well?
What, could it charge up a camera battery? Well, it's USB based, so if you can plug something in which would then charge via USB, then yeah, you charge whatever you can plug into it via USB. Anybody else got any questions on how I use tablets? Anything that people have found frustrating on tablets and would like to know?
It's not
Yeah.
how you use it, but probably to my shame, I'm sort of at ground zero. I'm one of the late adopters. One-man business. If I wanted to go from where I am now, ignoring the cost of a tablet, what sort of cost would I need to budget for to start using a number of the tools that you've referred to?
Well, most of the tools that I've mentioned cost nothing or a few pounds. So probably the entire software suite I've got on there has cost me under £50. Evernote is free, unless you want to upgrade to a premium subscription. I'm only using the free one. Wunderlist is free. The Apple Office apps are £7 each, I think. So they're probably the most expensive apps. The most expensive app was the Log Me in Ignition, and that's £12.
So I haven't got a financial argument for not doing it.
There isn't, from the app sense, the most expensive bit of kit is your tablet device itself. Now, if you're less technically minded, my advice generally still is go with Apple. I'm not an Apple fanboy. I'm not particularly tied one way or the other. There are definite benefits to the Android one, there are definite benefits to the Apple one. I still believe that the Apple devices are the simplest to use, and also they have the widest variety of reliable applications to install on them. The Android marketplace is a bit more Wild West still in terms of the apps that are available on it. One thing I would say is I bought the Wi-Fi only tablet. I don't see the point in spending the extra £100 cost of purchase and the ongoing contract to have a mobile enabled one, because all I do, 90% of the time when I'm out and about, you can join, you know, most cafes, all McDonald's, most business places have all got free Wi-Fi that you can log on to. And on the few occasions when they haven't, I just hook it up via the Wi-Fi hotspot that my mobile phone provides and can get onto the internet via my mobile phone, which means I'm only paying for one contract and saving myself £100 on the purchase price in the first place, and slightly better battery life.
And that's classed as tethering, is it?
That's tethering, yeah.
Okay.
There you see, you're not that, not a
No,
ground zero.
I'm not saying that I'm not technically savvy. I'm just saying I haven't
Yeah.
invested.
That's it.
What about the Windows-based ones? My son's got a Dell, which they're running their own. The Microsoft.
The latest version of the Windows Surface devices, the user interface, technically, they're great devices. They have one major problem. Most Microsoft developers are going stuff you to Microsoft and running off in another direction. Microsoft has messed them around so much over the last 2 or 3 years over what platforms they say they should develop their applications for, that they've gone, sorry, we just cannot be bothered to be messed around anymore, and have stopped developing for the Microsoft platform. And that's not just the mobile devices, that's Windows and Microsoft in general. Another member of our FSB regional committee, Dave Evans, is an application developer, and he's been tearing his hair out at what Microsoft have been doing. The Microsoft conferences have just become moaning at them, basically all the developers going, what on earth are you doing? And the big problem, if you go into the Microsoft marketplace to get apps, the number available compared to iPads, the Apple or the Android marketplaces is tiny. I'm into, socially I'm into running and cycling, and the choice of applications I use applications to track my running, so it uses GPS on my mobile phone, tracks where I've run, maps all the speeds and all the rest of it, all of that sort of thing. The choice of applications on iPads, and on iPhones is enormous for that. On Android, pretty good. Windows Mobile, you're really struggling to find a decent app to do it on, and a lot of the popular ones aren't there. And that's a repeated. The only thing that it is good for is if you want to use Excel or Word, natively switching between those document formats. It's pretty good for that, because obviously one thing Microsoft can get right is making sure their Office applications work on it. But there is supposed to be Office being launched for the Apple range of products as part of their cloud-based approach now to Office. So even that benefit is likely to be eroded soon. So that's my roundabout answer to saying, generally speaking, would recommend going for the Microsoft solution. BlackBerry, forget about it. You really are looking at, and the problem with Android is that there are lots and lots, it is, with Apple you sort of know what you're going to get when you go into the shop. With Android there are 101 different varieties of the operating system and lots of device choice. So it can be a bit of a, where do I start when you go to buy it? What do all these different specifications mean? But you can get some really good stuff out there. You won't go far wrong with Samsung stuff, to be honest. Yeah. They sort of cornered the market on the high quality Android devices at the moment. Any other questions on tablets? Yes?
Security-wise, is Apple still perceived to be, if you're out in a coffee shop
Yeah.
and you're on somebody's network, it's a public network,
Yeah.
is your security still there?
No.
Isn't?
Yeah. Isn't on anything.
Because you can't pick up viruses.
Yes, you can.
So you can.
Yeah. That's a myth put around, well, not a myth put out deliberately by Apple, but a myth that wasn't refuted by Apple. There are 1 or 2 viruses out there, mostly proof of concept viruses at the moment, rather than nasty viruses that will affect both Samsung. It is easier. One of the things that Apple's both a good and a bad point about the Apple devices is that the only place you can buy apps is through the Apple marketplace, and the only way you can get an app into the Apple marketplace is going through the Apple approval process. There's no other way to get an app onto the Apple device. That costs time and money. To get onto an Android, there you go, it's there. there's no checking process, there's no quality control process, and there's nothing to prove that the app you just downloaded hasn't got a virus payload. So that's why, to a certain extent, yes, they're more protected from viruses. But that doesn't, there have been proof of concept it is possible to hack, it is possible to get a virus onto them, it is possible to get malware onto them. There have been various cases over the last 12 months, as is the same for MacBooks and the OS X operating system for Windows, for Microsoft laptops. The only reason they haven't been targeted historically, largely speaking, was because nobody much was using them. And virus writers and malware writers go for the easy targets, i.e. there's hundreds of thousands of PCs, and comparatively there's a much lower percentage of Macs, so why bother writing viruses for Macs getting out onto PC? As the number of the usage and the type of users is changing onto Apple devices increasingly, then the virus writers and everything is starting to write for them. It's as simple as that, basically. So, security-wise, they're not intrinsically more secure than any other device. And the other reality is that if you're on a Wi-Fi network, on any device, in an internet cafe, you are exposing yourself to a high level of risk, i.e. don't do internet banking. Don't do anything where highly critical sensitive information is being passed backwards and forwards. If that is a requirement, there are tools and things that you can install on them to allow that to happen. Basically what it does is before data leaves your iPad, it encrypts it and creates what's called a VPN, virtual private network, to your office network or whatever it is you need to connect to. And that whole process is encrypted, so that whatever Wi-Fi you're on or whatever is irrelevant because they can't read what it is you're transmitting. But most of the data, even if you see HTTPS and the little padlock symbol, doesn't mean anything. It's actually still possible to spoof and get round those little things. I won't educate you on the details of how that's possible, but it is possible.
Thanks for filling us with confidence.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that is always a risk. And certainly if you don't know what's providing a Wi-Fi network, then don't use it. Don't just jump on another Wi-Fi network, because the likelihood is it's being put up there by somebody who's deliberately trying to get your information. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Scary, we've then finished.
As far as the virus is concerned, in the software you can put on,
There is antivirus software available for them. Again, it's a bit proof of concept stage at the moment. I'm not entirely convinced. The reason they're doing it is largely so they can sell you some antivirus software, I think, at the moment, more than anything else. Not that I'm cynical in any way, shape, or form about software providers. Okay?
Any other questions?
Do feel free, if you want to know more, do feel free to drop me an email. What we do as a business, obviously, is help businesses with the social media marketing. We help put together online marketing strategies, social media marketing strategies, and we try to do ones that will actually give you a return on investment and help you through the planning stage. When it comes to IT, my business does IT, so we can help you if you're wanting to dip your toe in the water but a bit uncertain about it and want a helping hand. Then again, we can help that sort of thing. That's my brief sales pitch here.
Can I just ask a question?
Yep.
For Dropbox and
Yep.
Google Drive, are you happy to leave, let's say, documents on there which you may feel should be secured?
On Dropbox, I wouldn't put anything which contains customer information. Reason for that, it's actually illegal. Dropbox is not an EU data safe haven, which means the data is actually stored in America and it doesn't comply with EU data protection laws. So you shouldn't put any customer data into Dropbox or any person's data into Dropbox. Google Drive, yes, I'll quite happily put it in there. Their servers are UK based anyway, so when I'm doing stuff it's UK based, as I'm a UK customer account, but also worldwide they comply and are registered with the EU Data Protection Act. Their encryption levels are very good. yes, probably the NSA is reading everything that I'm putting in there, but
Yeah.
then they could probably do that off my local PC anyway, so it doesn't really make any difference. And when it comes to security, people say, oh, the cloud, what if something goes wrong? The reality is they're investing a lot more money and a lot more time into their network security and systems than most small businesses do. So I'm more inclined to trust what they do. The only caveat with cloud in general is at the end of the day, you have no guarantee that those companies won't go bankrupt tomorrow. Highly unlikely in the case of Google, but certainly some of these smaller operators, like Evernote, for example, there is a risk that their business goes under. So LinkedIn is another example. If their business is, for whatever reason, go under, and you've invested your contact database only in LinkedIn, that's the only place you can go to find it, what would you do? So one of the things that's always worth thinking through is, disaster planning. What happens if? Have I got a backup of that data? How else could I access and maintain a copy of that data? Is always an important question to ask in any element of IT within your business. And again, that's something that I could talk at great length. I'm good at talking at great length about, but yeah, that's an important thing to consider, an important question to ask.
Okay. Ian will be around for a little bit, so if you've got any other sudden bright sparks of questions, really cool. But given us just talk to him. Key thing, I think a round of applause.
Yeah.
Very good.